Gravity Blues, the podcast where myself and my co-host Ron explore Earth and space-related concerns and interests. You know, last pod we were going over, this upcoming national championship game between the Ohio State Buckeyes and Notre Dame, and thankfully it turned out in our favor as we predicted. Ohio State came on top. That's their ninth, I think, claimed national championship. They have like seven more they could claim, like from like the 1920s and 30s when they didn't even like play like a bowl game. They just like voted on it, So, but nine total.
Kind of still works that way with
Yeah,
the voting.
yeah. But yeah, three natties in I think about like 20 years, right? That's not too bad. So yeah, the last two quarters were, a little, or at least like the last
Nope.
quarter was a little sketchy.
Never in doubt.
No, they always gotta keep us on our toes. Can't be easy. But it didn't make it more of a memorable watch, I guess. So yeah, that was really awesome. I'm still processing it.
And I'll say when it happened last night, um, I was like, are we gonna get fireworks? And there were fireworks. So I could hear as soon as it wasn't even at the end of the game, it was the last when the kick was made. Which I'll tell our little guest here before we spoil who it is.
Mhm.
This kicker has missed a bunch of his kicks this year.
Yeah, especially the Michigan game, which I sadly was at and had to watch him miss like think it was two or three kicks, and they were all like within 30 yards. And he made one, like he made that kick at the end, but he also had that 40 something yarder, which I don't know if that may have been his furthest all year. I'm not sure, but yeah, he made all of them. I was like, if that's the game you're gonna do it, that's
Yeah,
fine with
I
me.
guess I guess that's why they stuck with him. But good job to the Buckeyes. We love
Hmm.
that for Columbus and Ohio.
Yeah.
OH. Um, with that, we can we can move on forward. We do have a special guest today. We teased him up a little bit. Um, I've have the pleasure of calling our guest a good friend of mine, but
Absolutely.
I'll let him introduce himself a little bit. But we got a filmmaker, Alex Mills.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Mills. Sometimes my name is Philip Alexander Mills, depending on the room. I'm an independent filmmaker. I write, direct, and produce, whether that's for shorts or features, um, verging a little bit into the documentary realm also recently. But yeah, I went to high school with Ren, and he was as delightful and charming then as he is now. So I'm glad to be on the podcast, and I appreciate you guys um, having me on to discuss movies, which I tend to do for a living, honestly. So
Yeah.
when Ren told me the topic of the podcast, it was pretty easy. Yes, after that. But thanks.
Yeah, yeah. So excited to talk to you. We've been talking about having guests on, and I was like, I actually know somebody who's like in this world, so why not reach out and
Yeah,
see?
yeah. The first. Wow, that's pressure. I set precedent. So
Hmm. Yeah, we're just building from here. And I think, yeah, another reason why we
well,
want
you
to
got to
get you
start
on.
low and build your way up, right?
Right,
So
right. No, we're actually starting high, it's just, and we're gonna keep it a plateau. But
okay.
yeah, and one of the reasons we want to get you on, because one of the topics, of course, we talk about movies, we talk about sports, other things, space. But for movies, we're just viewers, we're enjoyers of film. So to get kind of how you view the filmmaking process is kind of where, where you could shed some light, and what
Yeah,
we're
that's
trying to get out of this. So, but
um I can definitely shed some insight on that. I'll just start
mhm,
off by saying that filmmaking is the world's most expensive hobby. It really is, and the entertainment industry isn't for the faint of heart. It's very difficult, especially in there's you're either like so far into the studio sphere where it's just corporate hegemony and this really awful machine of just perpetual like sequels and adaptations and money grabbing, and it's very corporately run ever since the 70s. And then the indie scene is where you have a lot more creative liberty, of course, a lot um, lower budgets, but then that's much more the Wild West in the sense of it's being run by independent producers. You can oftentimes step into the wrong business partnership with the wrong person, not necessarily knowing going into it. So you have to be very careful with that. And where I reside on both of those sides is much more on the independent side. So I'm Greek American. I grew up in Greece for 7 years. I'm very influenced by European art house cinema, and I'm interested in telling artistically inclined stories here in the States and abroad. Also, I'm working on some international projects as well. Um, but yeah, so I reside mostly in the indie scene, and it's interesting. But I'm happy to talk about anything relating to that you guys are interested in.
Yeah. Well, let's just jump real quick before we get too into what's going on now. Like, tell our audience a little bit about, what got you into this, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
you don't get into the world's most expensive hobby without a reason, right?
No, exactly. And I wouldn't recommend it to anyone unless it's really their life's passion. I got into filmmaking through writing. I've been writing since I was about 3 years old. Ren's a really avid writer also. We share that in common, which is great. That was sort of my entry point is writing scripts. It sort of took me a while to take myself and my work very seriously in that realm. I've been fortunate to have some of my screenwriting recognized by the Academy Nickel Fellowship and the Slam Dance Film Festival and so forth, which has helped me gain some traction as a screenwriter. And I'm a working screenwriter in the sense that so a lot of times, if as a working screenwriter, you will have obviously outside of like the TV writers room sphere, as a independent screenwriter, you'll write spec scripts, which very seldom get produced, and then based off of the merit of those spec scripts, you'll get job offers to do rewrites or book adaptations and so forth for other people's work that already have producers established and financiers backing it. Because the name of the game for filmmaking is very much, I got a piece of advice very long time ago, that there's like 30 financiers for every like 10,000 filmmakers or something. I don't know the exact odds proportions. No one can actually like gauge that. But the point is, and the reason I'm saying it's the Wild West, everyone's gunning for their funding, and you don't make money unless you raise money. So that part of the industry is very interesting. But I came into it through writing. I've written and directed a couple shorts. Now I work as a screenwriter on. I've been thankful lately to work on some multi-million-dollar productions and scripts, and then I work as a development producer as well. We can talk about that, but producing, there's different stages of it. By the time that you actually have a material and then being able to get everything in order to get the financing for it, and then shoot the movie and then get it distributed or sold, and so forth. There's so many people that go into it. And that was really the reason that I was interested in filmmaking over any other creative medium, because I'm very interested in creative expression in general, across all art forms. I'm a voracious consumer of all art, but filmmaking for me was the most collaborative art form. Screenwriting, it's too much of a it's like a it's a cliche Kaufman story where you're just sort of, driving yourself up a wall, and it's the room's so small and it smells bad and it's depressing. But what I really like the relational aspect of it, and finding the common humanity with other people in filmmaking. And what interests me most about filmmaking is not the final product, but it's actually the act of creation itself. Andrew Wonder, a recent friend of mine who is a director of photography for Paul Schrader, he did Oh Canada, told me, has this great saying about filmmaking where it's the only artistic medium that you work in the past, present, and future. So in screenwriting, you're writing the future, and post production, you're editing the past, and then there's this brief moment during production where everyone's coming together to work in the present, and that's really beautiful. And so I've kind of stuck with it
Yeah.
since.
Well, that's a really well spoken there. You're talking about those three different aspects. In those, specifically though, what like part of that is kind of highlight for you, and what part of that is probably the most stressful, piece where you're going, oh my God, what are we doing, right?
Yeah. That's a great point. So, let's see. So you have basically there's a couple stages of people say there's pre-production, production, and post-production. That's not true. There's also development and there's also distribution and sales. Um, I find myself in the producing aspect a lot on the development side. And so as a producer, I work on like putting together pitch packages, getting the like legal in order, getting the like script synopses in order, sizzle reels and so forth, proof of concepts to even be able to engage financiers, to be able to even have a project to be able to enter into pre-production. A lot of negotiating, a lot of hiring people. I'm developing a feature film right now with a $2.8 million budget that I intend to shoot as a director, that which I also wrote the script for this fall in Kentucky, because Kentucky has this what they call the Kentucky Entertainment Incentive Program, which essentially the state subsidizes a tax incentive between 30 to 35% of your total budget, which is why there's a lot of projects being drawn into Kentucky at the moment. My producer is an EP on a great Kentucky film being shot right now by Gus Van Sant, who directed Goodwill Hunting, that Bill Skarsgård is in, as well as Colin Domingo, who, as we verge a little bit later into discussing potential Oscar nomination predictions, is getting a lot of buzz right now. So that's to say, I've been very involved on the development side. I don't know too much about the distribution side. By the time it gets there, I'm leaving it to people that are more experienced on the sales side. But with pre-production, production, and post-production, I think film is an editor's medium. It's not a director's medium. I think that's you get the raw footage, and that's where you put it together into actual cinematic language. And I think oftentimes editors are the ones that understand cinematic language the best. I find the post production process to be the most grueling. Scorsese has a saying where if you watch your first cut and you're not physically nauseous, you don't care enough or you didn't do it right, something along those lines. And that's the case. The post production process is actually like stomach churning. It's awful. Pre production is a haze because it's so many pieces and so much money flying around. Uh, Production's a sweet spot because you get to sit in a chair and tell people what to do.
Mhm.
But no, in all actuality, it's amazing because um, on my last short, I cried on set because I was like, I wrote this 2 years ago, and now I have like 50 people here helping me bring it to life in front of me, and that's just something that's like it's this really weird out of body feeling that's very hard to articulate to someone that hasn't been in that position before, but it's so beautiful. Um, and I really enjoy that. So to answer your question very long-windedly, post production is the worst. Production's the best.
One thing I'm curious about too is, you talked about all these different phases and kind of your role in them. How, I guess, you know, with my job, I'm an aerospace engineer. So how I gained experience, I took these classes, but I'm not really getting you're learning things, but you're not actually getting hands-on experience with anything. So that's why they have like the interns or co-ops, or and then you actually start your job and you learn way more than you ever learn in college. How does that, I guess, translate for you? As a filmmaker, is it just like starting off on a set and getting
Mhm.
someone a coffee and like trying to help out as much as you can and build up as much experience?
That's an excellent question. First of all, I actually have an engineering background. Also, I have a mechanical engineering degree. I did that as well as an English lit degree, and then I went off to get a master's in creative writing. That's to say, I'm a closeted engineer. That part of my life is very much the past. But I have a lot of respect for engineers, and I think they're very brilliant. I think they do very important work. So thank you for doing that. But you're right. Filmmaking and art in general, it's um, the academic route isn't always that clear. I wasn't a film major, not because I was vehemently against the idea of it, but because I didn't really think that the program structure at the university that I wasn't really conducive toward what the actual industry entails. And I think a lot of film programs are either, unless you go to like NYU or USC or UCLA, are very like theory oriented and not production oriented. But basically, what I would say is the theory, like the academic, the scholarly side, belongs in universities. The production side, you get so much more experience by doing. I got into filmmaking on my own. I'm self-taught for the most part, in the sense that I started writing scripts and I got an internship and I found a producer that was willing to help me raise funding for a project, and he convinced his company to help shoot a short with me, and so forth. And it was very relational oriented, I would say. And in terms of the access point, the entry point into the industry is very much being able to have the confidence in your work and in your decision making to convince others that have the power to make decisions that you deserve to be one of the decisions that they make. Essentially is okay, and you got to scale your way up. My first short is was like $300. Now I'm working on $1 million productions. So that there's a, you know, you have to build it, and that takes a lot of time, definitely. But I wouldn't say that the academic route is very conducive toward what filmmaking actually is. I learned how to produce on my own in order to get my projects that were at the time unproduced off the ground. Um, I've since learned to really love producing, and I've started producing for others as well. But it really came about just reading textbooks about how to produce, talking to people and asking questions how to produce, because it's a very mystified industry and you don't really know what happens behind the scenes. And no one in film is really willing to help you unless they have something to gain for it. And so, my biggest advice, not that you necessarily asked this, my biggest advice for people trying to access the film industry is find what skill or trade, or even before that, if you have the ability to recognize what the other person wants or needs, and you're able to supply that and essentially throw it up in their face for them to be able to grab at it, you will have so much more success in getting meetings and those meetings going well and so forth. So you have to have something to offer the other person. The favor based filmmaking entering the career, like, hey, can you get me on set? Hey, can you do this for me? Will not get you very far.
Mm.
Lots of networking, it seems. You know, you got
So
to be
much.
able to.
It's so relational, and sometimes that's a great thing because people in film can be very cool, and then sometimes it's a bad thing because producers can be these like venture capitalist sharks that will fuck you over in a heartbeat. And as I said, it's Wild West in the sense of it is. Uh, you really have to like keep your moral integrity going into that stuff and know when you're getting taken advantage of.
Yeah. Wow. So okay, so but you're talking about getting into the industry, right? You're talking about meeting people, but like if there's somebody out there that's like, they want to go do, they want to write and direct. Is that
Mhm.
you say step one? Obviously, you're getting your career started right now too, right? But I think you're a little ahead now. Would you say yes, go do shorts first, or would you say try to get into where you were talking about before, like editing, working on scripts?
Yeah, so that's a good point. I think that, and that goes back to Alex's point a bit. Like the idea of getting coffee for people on set is a very long path. The idea of climbing your way up the uh like set ladder takes a very long time. If you can afford it, or if you can find a way to make a living while pursuing it, if you want to be a writer director, my biggest advice is to write and direct and to get your work out there and to get your work noticed. If you have no bargaining currency to a producer, if you said that I worked on set for this film, you do have some bargaining currency if you say I wrote and directed this, I got into this festival, um, and so forth. And so, if you want to be a writer and director, my advice is to find ways to get money to do so, find people to do it with. I've tended to be quite precious about the projects that I take on. Some people advise against that. Some people say direct when the opportunity presents itself right in front of you, even if the work's not great. I'm not sure whether or not my route has been the correct one or if I've held myself back by being precious about the projects that I take on. But you have to be strategic about finding ways to get financing, be organized, be reliable, and develop good relationships with people around you. But yeah, I would say the cliche everyone says is like, get an iPhone and go out and shoot something. I don't really agree with that because then your work isn't really going to look that different than everyone else that's doing that. I would advise, like, you know, rent a C100 or a C200 or a C300 camera for like a weekend. It's the same rate, and then spend like $250 on that, and then automatically your work looks much more cinematic. And
Yeah.
there's ways to like increase the cinematic potential of it for not a lot of money up front. But there's always going to have to be a little bit of investment into it. You're going to have to put some skin in the game for any project that you're on.
Yeah, and I think that is fairly common, at least in the current guys that are coming up. Some of the bigger names that we'll talk more about it when we're doing Oscars. But even we were talking about before, Robert Eggers. I know he's got like 4 or 5 shorts that he did before he did any kind of
And they're
feature. And
and they're really bad.
oh, you've watched them? They're not great.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they're really bad. He uh Eggers is an interesting one because if Robert, if you're listening, um, I love your work. I think you're brilliant. Don't get me wrong. But he didn't have what got him. I think it was a $5 million budget on a debut feature, which is a lot of money. Was purely the quality of his script. He was a phenomenal writer, and then he had a production design background, and he was able to leverage some of that and to be able to communicate what he wanted to get out of it in terms of the historical authenticity of the witch, which is maybe why people let him do it. I'm still not sure why they gave him so much money, but God, I am glad that they did because he's made some
Yeah,
great work.
and that
Yeah.
movie made a bunch of money too, so it ended up working out.
Yeah, The Witch, maybe it was a $4 million budget, and I think it recouped like 40 mil, and
Yeah.
box office, not even including streaming. So those producers have been very fortunate to work with them again and again, even though Northman lost a bunch, but that was a studio.
Yeah, we did
Yeah.
a big special about Nosferatu, and we saw that and talked all about all the ups and downs of his budgets. But
Yeah.
we love the all 4 of the films though.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's
It's hard to
he's
pick a favorite.
Yeah, he's a very interesting director. I think The Witch would be my favorite. I haven't actually seen Nosferatu. I was explaining to Ren that I've sort of been traveling a lot, so I didn't get the chance to be in a country where it was playing at the right time. It just sort of completely missed it. Um, but I hope people. I know he has a movie that he has in development called The Night, which he
Mhm.
wrote the script for and he's trying to get funding for, and I'm very excited to see him take on like just medieval Europe. Sounds delightful,
Yeah,
like Central Europe, I guess.
Mhm.
but yeah, going back to with short films. I mean, even we've talked before about Taika Waititi. Same thing, right? He had shorts before he got his feature. So I think that is probably is a blueprint for that. But I wonder if there is some people coming up now that haven't done that. I definitely um I feel like that's a more
Yeah,
recent, right?
I think it used the model used to be in the 90s. If you made a short, you could get the Sundance, get a notice, get a producer to fund your first feature, and so forth. That's gone down. It's such an oversaturated market, especially the short market. If you think about Cannes Film Festival last year, I spoke actually last week with someone that won the Palme d'Or at Cannes for his short film that he made, which is really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
It was an Egyptian short. But if you think about it, getting a short into Cannes, I think they let in 15 shorts last year out of 37,000 submissions. Don't quote me on those numbers, but they're pretty close. So that's to some degree a crapshoot. That's very difficult. What I think stands out more and what will gain you more legitimacy is a micro budget feature. If you're able to raise 100, 150,000, 200,000, now I'm not heeding my own advice, but and then make a micro budget feature, you'll gain a lot more notice and a lot more respect because one thing I've noticed as I'm transitioning and now currently scaling from doing shorts into features as fuck, it's a big difference. There is so much more legal associated with features and a lot of different steps.
Yeah, and they have I think they have platforms, right, that you can use to try and fundraise, money for those short films because I guess this isn't a short film, but there was a YouTuber who had been like a movie reviewer critic um for like the last 10 years or so, and probably more, and he eventually wanted to make his like first feature film, and he used a platform and was able to like raise a ton of money. Of course, it helped that he was, well known, and people knew
Was it
who was.
After Gang? Was it that? Was it the video essayist?
It was
He made
oh, I forget it. Oh, Chris Stuckman. Um he he made like a I think he actually just finished his movie, but he yeah, he pretty much
oh,
fundraised all of it to, to get this feature made, and I think he actually partnered with he actually is I think it's Neon is producing his or as the distributor, I believe.
Yeah,
So
well,
yeah,
Neon
it's cool what
Neon's
you can
really
do
cool.
with these platforms, and like I said, of course it helps if you already have a big following, but um,
Neon's great. It seems he's doing low budget horror, which my film is a horror film as well. I think,
awesome.
um, yeah, I I completely agree with that. One thing I found about the film community, and you can see that through like Letterboxd, you can see that through any other of these outlets, is that the film community is a very passionate one, and they're willing to help each other. Now it's harder now than it was 30 years ago to gain attention. But you're right that crowdfunding, you sometimes if you can communicate your reason for wanting to tell this story, and if you have a personal attachment to it, or something that is of value that sticks out, then you may have luck and to be able to do it. Completely agree. And that's very cool. I love that he did that. The
Mhm.
one that I was referencing is a director. I don't remember his name. He was doing like video essays, and then he did his directorial debut that was distributed with A24 called After Yang with Colin Farrell. So that's a pretty big directorial
Mm.
debut, but it did really well. I think it was
Yes,
like a sci-fi.
is that something that is you think is exciting? Is that kind of it seems new to like an audience? Maybe that's just because I'm a more recent like really getting into to watching things consistently. But it seems like A24 and even Neon and Focus are putting more emphasis on like these young vision like young directors coming in and giving them debuts. Where like I don't remember it being that common to be like, oh, this is another debut movie that I'm watching this year. Like it seems like
Yeah,
that's on the rise.
yeah, and as the companies that sort of fostered that sort of culture's change. It used to be Miramax for a while, right? A24, kudos to them. I think a lot of hard work and perseverance and really being able to like know their audience went into it. I interviewed with A24 once. I almost got an internship with them like back in college, and then COVID happened. And I was kind of distraught at the time, but it was good because it was for like publicity, and I wanted to go into filmmaking anyways. Uh, yeah, I agree that kudos to them because they place a lot of faith in first time filmmakers. And that's a hard thing to do because they're always, film is a risky enough investment as is. First time filmmakers is double risky. Um, and so you have, and sometimes you'll have big swings and misses, but it's important to be able to give first time filmmakers a chance at that
Yeah,
budget range and that
with
platform.
like pretty significant stars sometimes too. Like in these
Yeah.
movies, which I
Well,
think
that's the name of
that's
the
the
game in terms
surprise.
of. Go ahead. What'd you say?
I was just saying that's the part that is pretty surprising and feels like a new phenomenon.
Yeah, well, if you have an old, jaded, really cynical producer and a first-time filmmaker with enough energy to fill a brim, it's a really killer combo. Um, and so usually that producer's credibility you can leverage in order to be able to at least have a conversation with a big talent. And then if you have talent, the whole reason why movie stars are so like well respected in the industry is because they like you're able to raise funding and sell a movie better when you have cast attached. Um, it's a number thing. That's not at all discrediting the merit and the talent of these actors. But it's very much. I mean, people kiss actors' asses all the time because, even if you get Brad Pitt in your film for like 2 days, pay him like $1 million, and then include him in the trailer, your film will do substantially better both in theatrical and in streaming.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it makes me think of was it the Yesterday movie where they had I think it's Anna de
Yeah,
Armas.
and there's a lawsuit.
Yeah, and they sued her. They sued the movie because they didn't include her after the
No,
trailer.
no, was it Ana de Armas?
Yeah, I think so.
If there was any actress to sue
Yeah.
over Ana de Armas would be the one. I'd probably sue too. Fuck.
Yeah, fair enough. I,
Give me my money.
I don't know. I think that they did end up getting settled too. I don't know which
I
way it
think it
went.
won in his favor. He got paid for it.
Which is crazy because
Yeah.
they like rented it for $2 or something, like, and they made
Yeah, yeah.
some
And
good
I
money.
think he got like, I don't think it was like a fortune, but he
No,
could
but
at least fund the short film with whatever he got.
there you go. He needs to
Yeah,
reach
you
out.
probably profited in legal fees after
Yeah,
legal fees. Yeah.
well, hope so. Legal.
But yeah, uh, AB, you have anything else that you want to ask about that?
No, I just, the first thing you talked about, maybe this is, similar in all, like most art forms, but there's just to kind of reiterate it, but how you described to the kind of the hierarchy of of indie films and these big pictures that are there's some that have passion put into them, but there's a lot that are just complete money grabs. And I feel the same way when I look into more like the music industry.
Mm.
A lot of it is like that, where you've got these big artists that millions of streams, hundreds of millions of streams, and I just listen to some of it and I'm like, this is what's getting listened to the most. And I'll go to someone with like maybe 10,000, and they're putting their heart and soul into um you know this track, and they probably are probably doing it all themselves, producing it all themselves, maybe distributing it through I can't remember the name. There's like small indie artist distributors that you can use, but even those are, pretty. I've seen stories of those being very corrupt, and
Yeah,
the
and then Spotify will
copyright being
charge
weird.
you like a fish.
Yeah, yeah, you're getting paid a like a third of a penny or something for every listen, or maybe not even that. Like probably like a thousandth of a penny,
I
which is
think,
ridiculous.
that's the name of the game for these big structured like institutions backing artistic projects is they just try to squeeze margins out of really talented people, and they don't have much reverence. And look with the writer strikes that happened in LA, film writers get like no respect for any of the work that they do, basically, and are view it as very much like lesser, even though they're some of the smartest people in Hollywood. And so, um, I agree with you, and I think it's good to see that there's a shift into people. Um, I think indie cinema is is it's hard financially, but there's, I think, a lot of enthusiasm for it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Not to be too cynical.
No, I mean that's a lovely way to put it. It is great that to see that stuff on the rise, and especially, and you talk about how there's so many ideas out there. There's saying 10,000 for whatever 300
Yeah.
financiers, right, or whatever you said, 30.
Mhm.
But the other side of that is there's so many people that want to join that medium because they're passionate about it, right? And so
Yeah.
I mean that's an exciting angle, even though maybe it
Yeah,
is your
it is.
competition.
If you're going into filmmaking to make money, you're in the wrong business. Because if you're lucky and patient enough, you will make money in it. I think we'll probably talk about him when we talk about Oscar nominations, but Sean Baker's an excellent example of someone that's really paid his dues in the sense of he's just consistently been making great work for a very long time at low budgets, and he's starting to get really globally recognized now. Although the arts community has known him for a while, I think he's becoming much more. I think Nora was really his entry point into accessibility for mainstream audiences.
Yeah.
Um,
Was it Tangerine
and
that he did with the iPhone camera?
Yeah, he shot Tangerine, the iPhone camera. His wife produces his work. Like it's very, um, you know, it you very much feels like a auteur film that you would see from like the 70s. Um, yeah, and then, but also like distribution deals are incredibly hard to get into. If you make a film, it's incredibly hard to get it. It used to be incredibly hard to get a movie made and easier to get it seen, and now it's incredibly easy to get a film made, but really hard to get it seen.
I wonder if we'll ever get to like a sweet spot where it's right in the middle. Like I'm sure it's a pipe like like
I don't know. AI, I mean, not, I don't really want to talk about AI that much, but just because, like, like obviously it's fucking awful in a lot of ways and good in others. But
mhm.
uh, yeah, I just see the surplus of. I mean, Tyler Perry was about to invest like 800 million into a new studio in Atlanta, and then he saw like Sora's video creating abilities, and then scratched the entire $800 million investment like the next day. So who knows? But But my one comforting thing I'll say about film is that film has always been a very like it's always on the rocks. It's always your state as like financial freedom and security. That's an illusion in film that does not exist. It's a very precarious industry. You saw that transition from like black and white to color, from like no sound to sound, the advent of CGI, and now like AI is going to come in and take all the CGI artists' job. And like, so film has always been a medium that is quite subject to technological advancements and changes. And as a producer, you just have to roll with it
Mm.
and find ways to be able to keep telling good stories with stories that matter, with people that matter. Also, all people matter, but people that have stories that it's just they're dying to tell. And I'll end by saying, one good thing about working with first time filmmakers, which is why I think there's something to be said about the jaded, cynical old producer that's made 100 films and the first time filmmaker, is oftentimes the first time director, this is the project that they waited their entire life to make. This is the story they waited their entire life to tell. And that personal element is something that can't be replicated. It's the reason why we continue to go watch films and find our common humanity in other people's works. R.I.P. David Lynch. But I can't help but think how metaphoric it is that David Lynch's last image of the world was L.A. burning in flames. Like that's a bit too metaphoric for me to really
Yeah.
wrap my head around.
Yeah, but also, perhaps a movie that he would have made might have been something about LA burning through fires like that. So,
No question. What a guy. I love him. He was just sort of it was really overwhelming to see the arts community's response to his death. And he's just sort of that like kooky old grandpa that every artist really loved. But I honestly can't think of any filmmakers, at least that I know, in the 21st century that haven't been impacted by his work. And Mulholland Drive specifically, Blue Velvet, Eraserhead, Twin Peaks, of course. Everyone seems to be drawing aesthetic influences from it. We'll talk about the substance, but one of the reasons that I really disliked that film is just because it felt like such a David Lynch ripoff. Um,
Hmm.
I saw so much Mulholland Drive, even those like I think there were dissolves, but those images of like the palm trees and that low angle shot, I was just like, that is just straight taken out of
well,
Mulholland
and
Drive. And
there's
it's
a couple movies also like the what's it, The Shining, a lot of those hallway shots. Like I was like, this is pretty, side by side here, but
absolutely,
and then The
yeah.
Thing,
It's
obviously.
in if you saw Ren, I'm sure you saw I saw the TV glow.
I haven't seen that.
Uh,
I haven't seen that one
oh,
yet.
you haven't? Okay. Well, it's interesting to see. I just think that like Lynch's influence and Queer also from Guadagnino
Yeah.
and say there seems to be Lynch's aesthetic sensibility and his influence on artists seems to be more apparent than ever in work that I'm seeing these days. And so his legacy lives on, although he'll be missed dearly.
I mean,
Yeah.
this year we got other things too, right? Like talk about A Different Man with Sebastian Stan, right? Like I know it's different tonally, but um, The Elephant
Excellent
Man,
movie.
right? Has
Yeah.
some
Yeah,
inspiration coming from there. Even Dune 2 that like that came out. I mean, obviously we got a David Lynch Dune movie also. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of
no, you're right about that. A Different Man's interesting. I met Adam Pearson at Heathrow Airport
oh wow.
while he was at Berlinale. He follows me on Instagram. Fun fact, shameless plug. I
Hmm.
DM'd him and he wasn't interested in working with me, but
Hey.
I'm not bitter. He's really talented in that movie. Honestly, it's one of my favorite performances of the year, and I'm really proud of what he was able to do. Um, but I agree, and yeah, Dune 2, the Dune Lynch was his first and last studio film. He lost people so much money, which was
Well,
very
and
interesting.
what I'm willing to think is because he wasn't allowed to edit it himself, right? We know that they cut out like an hour worth of content at least. Um,
Mhm.
so my theory is perhaps they just cut out the good bits, or the very
Yeah.
good bits.
Well, you could kind of, if you see that the pacing in that film is fucking bizarre because like it's like a 2 hour film and the first like hour 40 is like the half of the book and you're like okay and then like the last 20 minutes is the second half, so I can see where they cut from. I still won't give Lynch that much of the benefit of the doubt, no matter how much I love him. Like, I don't know why he has pugs in the Dune
Yeah, it's the
world,
space pugs.
and he took a lot of creative liberties. Um, but I respect artists more who have like failures, quote unquote, or perceived as failures, because I think they're trying things and pushing themselves to do things different.
Yeah,
Mm.
I totally agree. It sucks that that left such a sour taste in his mouth that he was afraid, or not afraid, but he had no interest in doing a big budget film again after that, right?
Yeah,
Which
but
he
I'm kind of glad he did.
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah, and he still was able to, go on to make Twin Peaks and Mulholland Drive after, so at least that wasn't his, last, last ever appearance. Been a
Yeah, no, he's
this
made
way
some
on.
great pieces. But I'm not sure if you guys know this, but Mulholland Drive started as a failed Twin Peaks TV pilot spinoff.
Mm.
And then it didn't get picked up because he kept like filming dog shit, and the studios freaked out and they were like, "We're cutting this. We're not greenlighting this." And then the French came in and said, "Hey, we'll put up the rest of the financing if you can turn this into a feature." And then he went home and thought about it for a couple months, and then came back and was like, "Okay, actually, I did think about," which was like essentially the last 30 minutes. I did think about a way that I could turn this into a feature concept, and it's brilliant. It's one of the best movies ever made, no question.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, one of many movies that we were talking about before are great from him. I know he did other things too outside of film, right? Why you've told me about some of the publicity stunts that he's done, which with the cow,
Yeah,
right?
I love the cow. I'm actually gonna do that for my film, because there's a cow is actually a central character in my film because there's some like, I'm very interested in ecological horror essentially as a genre that I want to sort of put into the mainstream of film, and there's a lot that goes on in my feature about like animal rights and like the meat processing industry and our relationship with nature and the environment and so forth. So there's this cow character in my film, and I, for like all the press junkets for like festival like tour and everything like premieres, I want to bring the cow with me and do anytime I sit down to speak, I want him or her beside me, because and that was an idea that I got from David Lynch when he was trying to raise awareness for Laura Dern's performance in Inland Empire for the Academy Awards, which it had no shot of getting recognized, but I love Lynch's optimism in it. He sat outside with a cow. His was that was less relevant and pertinent to the narrative. I think it was just because like he had a cow at his disposal and was like, maybe this will grab some people's attention. One of my favorite Lynch's stories, just speaking about his relationship to animals, also, it's like, I think it was from an assistant of his. It was like 8 a.m. They were on set, and Lynch went up to her and it was like, "I need a monkey, a horse, and a one-armed man by noon." And it's like, okay, David, sure. And he got it because like, and that's pretty badass.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's really cool. He does a lot of publicity stunts. He's also a painter. He was very into meditation and had a nonprofit, transcendental meditation that he sort of ran in the later part of his life. He's written a book as well, and so he was a very multimedia artist. But one aspect that I found very disappointing was at the end of his life, he was trying to get this animated feature, which he had co-written with the person that did what's that animated film with the skeletons?
Oh, Nightmare Before Christmas?
Yes, thank you. So he
Mhm.
co-written it with the Nightmare Before Christmas writer, and it was called
Not Tim
Snoot World.
Burton.
Not Tim Burton. No, I think Tim Burton directed it. Maybe he wrote it. Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong one. I'll look into that. But it wasn't not Tim Burton. But he was trying to get that finance at the end of his life. It didn't get financed, which is unfortunate. But I would have loved to see Snoot World and a David Lynch animated project because he actually his very first short film that he ever made was like a stop motion animated film called Six Men Get Sick Six Times,
Mm.
I think. And it's on Criterion. It's really actually fucking stunning. It's so gorgeous. But I would have loved for him to sort of bookend his career with animation. But he's a gem, and I can't lie that I was quite. I mean, I was really struck by his death just because, um, there's not he's a once in a generation artist, um, and he had a vision of the world that no one really else possessed, and that's something to be celebrated.
Yeah, I think I just read Kyle MacLachlan's like a tribute post to him and
Yeah,
talking about
so
how
stunning.
uh
I cried.
yeah, I know it there you go. If you want to have a little emotional journey right there, but
Yeah, I
Yeah,
might have to read that after this.
well, really
that was
really great line though. He said that David like is more interested in asking questions than answering them or along those lines. I was like that is a really good, way to describe what he was about, I think. So, yeah, really really great. I'm definitely worth checking out that though.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think he also said that David was the most human, uh, and I completely agree with that because there's one thing as a creative to just sort of come up with abstract images as a writer. Lynch's brilliance comes from the fact that when he drew these abstract images from his did I break up for a sec?
You're good.
Okay. When he drew these abstract images from his subconscious, he was able to find the ones that were honest and were emotionally resonant and appealed to our common humanity, no matter their peculiarity. And that's really why his work will stand the test of time. Um, and so I love that line that he was the most human because he really was. He was such an empath. He loved people,
Yeah.
as weird as it was.
Yeah. That's fantastic there. I think we should move on there. I don't want to get too emotional here in the middle of
Mhm.
our time.
I don't want to be the first and last guest to stop us.
No.
Whoa, thank you guys for listening to that first half of the pod. And I say that because I'm kind of gonna cut you off here. If you listen to audio, you're probably like, what the heck is going on? Well, we split this episode interview into two parts. So you've just finished the first part. For that second part, come back later this week and you'll find it there. But we appreciate you guys listening. Cheers.